Member Saanich North and the Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wonder how LMS Reinforcing Steel feels about the federal government exempting LNG Canada from steel tariffs. Anyway, 3 years ago, Premier Horgan said, and I quote, "The people of British Columbia should see the primary benefit from an LNG industry, and we need to make sure that jobs go to British Columbians." He's quoted in answer to saying if 70% of those 100,000 jobs were going to come from somewhere else, one has to pause and ask, why have we been putting so much energy into doing something if it's for somebody else? According to the BC NDP's LNG framework from earlier this week, LNG Canada will create 10,000 jobs during construction and 950 permanent jobs once operations are underway. On LNG Canada's website, it states that they're not hiring employees directly during construction. Instead, they're hiring a prime contractor who will hire implementation contractors who will hire subcontractors. The latter two will hire workers. Through you, Honourable Speaker, to the Minister of Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources, LNG Canada is committed to helping local residents take advantage of employment opportunities, but they will not be the ones hiring workers. How many of the LNG employment opportunities can be guaranteed to go to British Columbians, and how many will go to temporary foreign workers?
Minister, Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and I understand why the member would be concerned about who is getting these jobs, because the previous government, when they were in charge of this file, they were signing blank checks, they were letting projects go forward without any commitment for local hire. Honourable Speaker, when we became government, we were adamant that we had 4 conditions, and one of those conditions...
Members, may we please hear the response? Thank you.
We were adamant that we had 4 conditions, and one of those conditions was that jobs have to go to British Columbians first and foremost. We have to see training opportunities in the construction phase as well as throughout the permanent jobs, Honourable Speaker. And LNG Canada has committed, and they have signed contracts with their contractors that there's a local hire first policy, Honourable Speaker. So just as an example, they've contractually required their engineering and procurement company to follow this policy, and that is across the board. They have signed 20 impact benefit agreements with First Nations. First Nations will be at the front of the line for these jobs, Honourable Speaker. And what does that mean? That means prosperity and benefits to the north from well to tidewater. Yeah.
Member Saanich North and the Islands on a supplemental.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, the minister's reading of my concern is misplaced. I'm concerned that the program on this side of the House is looking very much like the program from that side of the House. The idea of having conditions associated with development isn't a new idea, Mr. Speaker. Former Premier Christy Clark's 5 conditions were often used to obfuscate her government's position on the Trans Mountain Pipeline. I think it's critical that if the NDP are choosing to use a similar tactic of having conditions, that these conditions should be shown to be substantive and actually mean something. One of the NDP's 4 conditions, as the minister highlighted, for LNG development is that it creates jobs for British Columbians. So my question, Mr. Speaker, is for the Minister of Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources. We know that LNG Canada will be using contractors to conduct most of the hiring. What specific, I repeat, what specific oversight systems has this government put in place to ensure that jobs on this project are not simply given out to temporary foreign workers, but that British Columbians are actually the people benefiting from this project?
Minister, Energy, Mines and Petroleum Resources.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. One of the things that we wanted to see was not just words but actions, and we not only saw LNG Canada's commitment to a local hire first policy in writing, Honourable Speaker, with their contractors, but they've already invested $2.85 million on workforce development in the north. So they're already investing in people in the north, Honourable Speaker. And just to give you a sense of what this means for people in the north. I represent small communities, Honourable Speaker. When we gain 6 full-time family-supporting jobs in our communities, we're ecstatic. When we lose those jobs, we're disappointed, Honourable Speaker. So can you imagine what 950 means? And it's exactly why Mayor Phil Gramuth from Kitimat was ecstatic and was smiling ear to ear on Tuesday morning when LNG Canada made their announcement, Honourable Speaker. But it's not just mayors from well to Tidewater or First Nations communities from well to Tidewater, Honourable Speaker, who are happy about this. Let me tell you what Christy Lear has said about this. She's a young woman. She doesn't hold any formal position. Other than that, she needs to work for a living, and she's from Fort Nelson. She had to leave Fort Nelson because she couldn't get a job there. The economy in that community has been depressed as a result of a downturn in natural gas in past years. Well, this is what she said about LNG Canada's announcement. It's huge. My town has just been saved, and Christy is on her way back to Fort Nelson so she can get a job. Honourable Speaker, when people like Christy are heading back home so that they can get work and be a part of their community, that's a good thing for British Columbia.